Today's video I'll be making for a friend of mine that lives in England. His current terminal subclade is not on the family tree DNA haplotree because his one match tested with a different company. It is on the Y-fold haplotree. The subclade is I-Y277242, which dates to approximately 569 years ago according to Y-fold age estimates. This one subclade match for this branch can trace its earliest known patrilineal ancestors to England prior to the USA. The rest of the subclades and age estimates in the following graphic come from the family tree DNA database. People such as my friend that have English ancestry and are positive for haplogroup I1 often want to know, did their patrilineal forefathers arrive to the region with the Anglo-Saxons or later on with the Vikings? In this video, using ancient DNA evidence, I'm hopefully going to provide compelling evidence that the answer to that question is the Danes during the Viking Age. A new preprint was recently released titled Steppe Ancestry in Western Eurasia and the Spread of the Germanic Languages. In this preprint, there was a lot of interesting information regarding the origins of the Anglo-Saxons. To quote the preprint, quote, "Here we find almost all samples from England fall within the southern Scandinavian clusters, restricting the range from the Netherlands to Jutland," end quote. To further quote the preprint, quote, "We can now reject the Danish Isles and Sweden as a source area for the Anglo-Saxons in Britain," end quote. Based on the aforementioned information, if my friend's patrilineal forefathers were Anglo-Saxons, I would expect them to find some ancient DNA evidence in the areas shaded in the following map. But when I analyze my friend's subclades, going all the way back to the Bronze Age with subclade IS26361, I find zero ancient DNA evidence that can be associated with the Anglo-Saxons, both in continental Europe and in England itself during the early Middle Ages. In 2022, there was a very important study that was released titled The Anglo-Saxon Migration and the Formation of the Early English Gene Pool. Out of all the ancient DNA locations that you can see in the following image from that study, there were zero ancient DNA samples that can be associated with my friend's subclades starting all the way back to the Bronze Age with IS26361. Let us now take a look at the ancient DNA evidence for these same subclades for my friend that can be associated with Viking Age Denmark. In the following map, the Danish island of Zeeland is also referred to as Zealand or Sealand, and the island of Finn is also referred to as Funen. So it depends on what language you are speaking. My friend's first ancient DNA connection comes from the 2020 study, Population Genomics of the Viking World. The ancient DNA sample is labeled Craig Have 532 in the family tree DNA database. He's also known as VK532. He lived sometime during the Roman Iron Age between 1 and 200 CE. He was discovered in Craighave Odif Tofter on the island of Sealand in Denmark. He connects to my friend through the Bronze Age subclade IS26361. The next ancient DNA connection also comes from the 2020 study, Population Genomics of the Viking World. This sample is labeled Tola 71 in the family tree DNA database. He's also known as VK71. He lived sometime between 700 and 1000 CE. He was discovered in Tola on the island of Sealand in Denmark. He connects to my friend through the late Bronze Age, early Iron Age subclade IS22349. The third ancient DNA connection comes from the 2024 study, Elevated Genetic Risk for Multiple Sclerosis Emerged in Steppe Pastoralist Populations. The sample is labeled Algade835 in the family tree DNA database. He lived sometime between 1350 and 1400 CE. He was discovered in Holbæk on the island of Sealand in Denmark. He connects to my friend through the subclade IFGC24357, which dates to the pre-Roman Iron Age. Lastly, my friend's closest ancient DNA connection also comes from the 2020 study, Population Genomics of the Viking World. The sample is labeled Galgadil LS in the family tree DNA database. He's also referred to as VK446. He lived sometime between 800 and 1100 CE. He was discovered in Galgadil on the island of Funen in Denmark. He connects to my friend through the subclade I-Y277242, which dates to the Roman Iron Age. This archaeological site was also mentioned in a 2014 research article, Galgadil, Isotopic Studies of a Viking Cemetery on the Danish island of Funen, AD 800 to 1050. You can see in the following map from that research article that the archaeological site of Galgadil is located in the north of Funen Island. Galgadil LS is grave labeled LS, which is in the far right-hand area of the middle blue region. So all four of my friend's closest ancient DNA connections come from the Danish islands. And I just want to reiterate what the recently released preprint wrote about this subject matter. Quote, "We can now reject the Danish Isles and Sweden as a source area for the Anglo-Saxons in Britain." End quote. I feel that that evidence, combined with the fact that there is zero Anglo-Saxon ancient DNA evidence, leads me to conclude that the most likely explanation for my friend's patrilineal forefathers entering the region of England would be in association with the Danes during the Viking Age. What else can we learn about my friend's patrilineal line? Well, his subclade IS14393, which dates approximately to 463 CE, is shared with yours truly. Yes, everything mentioned in this video up to this point applies to my own patrilineal line as well as to my friends. I believe that our patrilineal lines diverged apart somewhere in the Danish Isles after this subclade. My friend also has an interesting patrilineal connection with the IFT268649 subclade, which dates approximately to 585 CE. He shares this branch with the famous Roosevelt family. I believe that my friend's patrilineal divergence with the Roosevelt patrilineal line occurred somewhere in the Danish Isles as well, with the Roosevelt patrilineal line eventually emigrating to the Netherlands from the Danish Isles, and my friend's patrilineal line eventually ending up in England. One might ask, if my friend's patrilineal forefathers were in the Danish Isles leading up to the Viking Age, why don't we find modern Denmark matches in the database? Why don't we have people claiming Denmark for the earliest patrilineal country of origin that are also positive for the subclades leading up to the Viking Age? And I can think of three possible reasons why. First, as of April 11, 2024, in the family tree DNA database, only 847 Y chromosome testers have claimed Denmark for their earliest known patrilineal country of origin. So it's theoretically possible that my friend does have these subclade matches for those subclades leading up to the Viking Age that do currently live in Denmark but just haven't tested yet. Another possibility is all evidence for a Danish Isles origin for these subclades leading up to the Viking Age emigrated away from the Danish Isles during the Viking Age. Lastly, you could have a scenario where there was evidence, there were people living in the Danish Isles after the Viking Age who were positive for these subclades, But over the past 1,000 years, over the past millennia, those patrilineal lines died off and do not have any patrilineal descendants living today. If either scenario 2 or 3 is correct, then we're not going to find any modern testers positive for the subclade living in Denmark or claiming Denmark for their earliest known patrilineal country of origin today. Now, my friends, closest in time subclade to the Viking Age is I-Y277242, which dates approximately to 769 CE. If we take this age estimate as a hard age estimate and as fact, then I believe that the patrilineal divergence for this subclade occurred in the Danish Isles as well. But if we allow flexible age estimates, then it's possible that this subclade could have already originated in England if the true age estimate is around 100 years later when the Great Heathen Army entered England. I think either scenario is plausible and possible. Now, there is quite a large time gap of approximately 700 years of missing data between my friend's terminal subclade, which dates approximately to 1455 CE, and its parent subclade, which dates approximately to 769 CE. So I'm open to a range of possibilities occurring during this 700-year time gap, including even a possible stop in Normandy, France. Even though there is currently no concrete evidence tying the Normans to my friend's patrilineal line, I think it's still entirely possible. And we know that the Danish Vikings did have a strong presence, not only in England, but in Normandy, France as well. My friend's one subclade match for his terminal subclade, which dates approximately to 1455 CE, can trace their patrilineal forefathers to the region of Worcestershire in England approximately 100 years later, around the mid-1500s. Being only separated by around 100 years, it's possible that the patrilineal divergence between my friend and the subclade match could have occurred in Worcestershire, which is the region shaded in red in the following map, or a surrounding area as well. What I do know, though, is that my friend's patrilineal line would eventually end up in London, where my friend lives today. Now, my friend's surname is not his biological surname. So it was really neat for him to eventually get this subclade match not too long ago, dating to around 1455 CE, because now my friend knows what his Y chromosome biological surname most certainly is. And I'm really happy that he was able to find that out. What additional information can we learn from my friend's STRs? Well, he has a very fast STR mutation rate. As a result, he only has one Y111 match and 3 Y25 through Y67 matches. All 3 of these matches most likely connect to my friend with the I-Y277242 subclade. So unfortunately, my friend does not have any promising leads that predate that 15th century branch. Thanks for watching.